Well, thanks again, panelists, for agreeing to be with me on the stage today. We have a lot of material to cover. Jeff asked us to kind of dive into some of the challenges we're looking at, some of the opportunities, and ways we can continue collaboration with our local partners as an industry. So I guess we're going to go ahead and get started. Starting with a subject that's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, and one that's really risen to the top in terms of a high priority item, not just for the oil and gas industry, but also for the entire business community, and that's workforce. Ken, I'm going to start with you as a leader in the oil and gas service sector. How has the workforce shortage hit NewKota in particular? What are the biggest challenges you face as an employer in the region in attracting and retaining your workforce personnel and those skilled workers that do the work of the bucket? And then finally, what are some of the tools that you found useful in tackling this unique problem?
Yeah, thanks, Brady. Well, things were easier before COVID. Let's just put it that way. Pre-COVID, we had the luxury of having stacks of resumes and, a lot of people wanting to work, it seemed. And, since then, after COVID, that's gone away. NewKota, we do interviews probably weekly or every other week. We're sitting right now around 100 employees, but it's challenging. For a kid out of high school, 18 years old, they can make, starting $85K a year, full benefits, everything. But, NewKota can offer that, but so can every other service company or oil company in the basin offer that. So what we've done as a company and tried, to see some success from it is really just focus on the culture of our company, making sure that it's a good place to work, showing that we actually do care about the employees, and teaching them and showing them that there is a progression within their positions. They start out new to the oil field, but they can become a supervisor or, a lead role or a manager role, and educating them that and showing them that this is a career for them and not just, a way to make a quick buck. So we've seen a lot of success with that. I mean, we've done our traditional radio, TV, we've done it all. Some things that we've seen success with too is you just got to be relevant. You got to be out there. I offer to, any teacher or high school, I'll go talk to their senior class or junior class and just tell them what the oil field is. They don't necessarily have to come work for NewKota, but there's a lot of kids out there that, maybe don't want to go to a trade school right away or post-secondary university or college. So just letting them know that it's out there, letting them know that, we're obviously in a need for employees. We've seen some success with that too, Brady. North Dakota Petroleum Council did a Bach and Grow program where, we were able to get a U4U, United for Ukraine visa program. NewKota was, we benefited and we got 4 employees from Ukraine. And I'm thankful to say, or happy to say, that 3 of them are still with us, and all 3 of them are going through the process to become permanent residents in the U.S. So what a great program. Obviously a feel-good program, but also helped the need with our employee shortage.
I'm really glad that worked out for you, Ken. I know that that's an ongoing issue over in Ukraine, and the relocation business is still being utilized, as I understand, by individual industry members out there, despite the kind of North Dakota Petroleum Council taking its foot off the gas and promoting it. So glad to hear that it's still being useful as a really an innovative way to fix that gap. I'm going to move on right down the line, I guess, down to ONEOK. ONEOK has found some rather unique ways in which to attract and retain workforce. And filling that need on the midstream level. Danette, what are the opportunities for careers within ONEOK in particular? And what are some of the tools your company has employed to both make our young people aware of these opportunities out in western North Dakota and get them trained up to fill those roles?
Sure. Well, I don't know that we're necessarily unique in our approach. I think there are a lot of companies who are doing similar things to what we're doing in terms of workforce attraction, retention, recruitment, all of those things. But what I will say is I'll start with a little bit of an overview. I mean, everybody here is pretty familiar with ONEOK, but I don't know if you recognize just how many employees we have in this region. There are, I guess we're upwards of 500 employees now in the Bakken region. Over 400 of those are in North Dakota specifically. And we're not just in western North Dakota. We also have assets on the eastern side of the state. So we do work on that side of the state as well, trying to find and retain good employees. But some of the things that we have been doing over the course of the last few years, and this has really ramped up quite a bit just, post-COVID, because we're all experiencing the same kinds of application shortages, is engagement with education, and not just our high school kids. We're looking a lot younger. We're trying to engage students all the way from the elementary level forward. We work with groups like Gateway to Science. We work with the T4 group. I never remember what the 4 T's are for, but just today there's a T4 event in Partial, and I believe ONEOK is a part of that. It's today and tomorrow. But being engaged with students from the elementary age all the way through graduation is really key for us. That continues with our engagement with the tech centers. So the Bakken Area Skills Center in Watford City is a really big player for us, a big investment on behalf of our company, and an engagement opportunity, not just for recruiting students, but also for training our current workforce, retraining existing workforce as they look to move into our sector from other sectors as the industry ebbs and flows a bit. So we look at those opportunities, not just the Bakken Area Skills Center, but we're also engaged with technical institutions that are all over the area, including the tech center that has been built in the Belfouche and Spearfish area. Our natural gas liquids pipelines office is in Spearfish, South Dakota, so we are looking at ways to recruit students there. And of course, we have a presence in Wyoming, a considerable presence in Wyoming. So being able to reach students not just in the Bakken region, but really across the tri-state region has been really helpful for us as well. And then, of course, the engagement that we have with tech schools or higher education, Bismarck State College being a really key player in that for us. We've long worked with BSC in program development, training opportunities. We do a lot of on-the-job training, so we may hire you and you don't have any education in the kinds of work that you're doing for us, but we'll put you through school to get you where you need to be, and that could be a certificate, that could be a 2-year degree, that could be a 4-year degree, depending on what your track is. You may even go on to an advanced degree beyond that. So lots of opportunities there, and we're really grateful for the investment that the state has made and the investment that our local communities have made in those opportunities to help us be more successful in the work that we're trying to do in that area.
Danette, I really appreciate your response and the focus on North Dakota's youth. That's, in my humble opinion, a critical aspect of that whole puzzle. So those superintendents in the room, I really hope you were listening to that. Josh, on the same topic, you're currently the chair of the North Dakota Petroleum Foundation, which is the 501c3 nonprofit that we created back in 2018 to really head up everything that was under the North Dakota Petroleum Council portfolio, dealing with things like education, community outreach, you name it, anything that hits that 501c3 realm. We, through the years, have developed a number of programs. One of them that we've been more engaged in is something that Danette mentioned just a minute ago, the T4 initiative. I have in my notes that stands for Tools, Trades, Torque, and Tech. So I have it written down, so Danette, appreciate that. Josh, can you tell us more about that program in particular and what it's doing to get our young people teed up to get into the workforce? Yeah.
You can do that now that you're a dad. You can do the dad jokes now, so that's great. T4 was something that the Petroleum Foundation has jumped onto in the last few years, but Kent Ellis at Bismarck Public Schools was the driving factor behind T4 and reaching elementary and younger school-age kids with these job opportunities, not just in oil and gas, but I mean in construction, in engineering, and all of those aspects. You know, it was focused around the Bismarck region right away, and then through partnerships, we were able to send Kent. You know, Kent's done T4 summits in Bowman, I think was probably one of his more successful or higher attended T4 summits, huge ones in Watford City where, you know, there'll be 3 days of kids coming into the Rough Rider Center from every location, from every town in northwestern North Dakota and northeastern Montana to be able to do hands-on activities and learn up close, whether it's flying a drone or looking at drone technology or you know, construction equipment, all of that stuff in order to pique the interest of students. If you're able to put your hands on it, touch it, and feel it, you're going to take more of an interest in it. So from the foundation's perspective, this was you know, being involved in that was a no-brainer because, you know, we've talked a lot in our industry about the need for not just in finding employees now, but getting employees not just for our industry, but every industry in Western North Dakota curious about the opportunities that are here for them. Preston touched on it a little bit, you know, earlier, you know, when he graduated in 2005, it was the same thing when I graduated. You know, I went to Grand Forks to college, never thinking I would end up, you know, back in Bowman and then Dickinson and then Bismarck. It was just the opportunities weren't there. But we also didn't have the same kind of hands-on look at what a career could look like in this area of the state. I mean, you went and you met with your guidance counselor. I specifically, I don't remember much from 20-some years ago, but you met with a guidance counselor and you filled out a questionnaire, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you would be a good, you know, school teacher." Yeah, maybe. But this is allowing students to actually see it, touch it, feel it, and take an interest in a career where they can, in a good place where they can raise a family in Minot or Williston or Watford City or Stanley or Rame. So I think that's pretty exciting. So that was a no-brainer from the Petroleum Foundation's perspective that, you know, to be able to expand the T4 program and really put it out there for as many students as we possibly can is money well spent every time.
Yeah, I checked, Josh, with our executive director of the Petroleum Foundation this morning on what we did in terms of student numbers here last year, and she put that at a conservative estimate between 8,000 and 10,000 kids. Which is incredible because as you spoke about, having that hands-on just makes all the difference in the world. Funny you mentioned the proficiency tests and aptitude tests that we all took in high school. You'll never guess what mine was, but had to do with actuarial science, whatever that is. But it was clearly, I went to high school in Killdeer, North Dakota, and it was a clear separation from the kids that didn't do so hot in math and sciences. They went into shop and became very proficient in welding and electrical and that kind of thing. And I think that there was a big gap that was missing, at least at that time, with the hands-on. Folks were not aware of the career paths that were out there, and I think that's really exciting. So really looking forward to increasing those student numbers and that exposure to these career paths. So thank you for your efforts on that. While we're on the subject of workforce, I think each of our panelists would agree that our people are really our most valuable asset and resource. So many of the people your companies employ also serve on local school boards, county commissions, volunteer fire departments, local chambers of commerce in Kent's perspective, and other organizations within our Western North Dakota communities. Safe to say that protecting the safety and well-being and health of our employees is a top priority. Kent, you're active in NDCC's One Basin, One Way Advisory Committee, as well as the Workforce Safety and Insurance Advisory Board. Can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of safety in your workplace in particular, and what NewKota and your peers are doing to make sure everyone goes home safe at the end of the workday?
Yeah, Brady, it's exactly that. I mean, we want to make sure that everyone does go home safe at the end of the workday. I mean, that's the most important thing. Everyone's out there trying to make a living to provide for their family, their loved ones. We don't want to hurt people or even worse, right? So we got to make sure that we focus on that every single day and making sure we're having that message, making sure we're giving them the proper equipment to keep them safe, make sure our equipment that they're using is up to speed and certified. One thing, our motto at NewKota is safety first and service always. We live by that motto. That is our culture. We've established a program within that where, you know, every day that one of our employees works safe and good service quality gets a point. We have catalogs. It's been pretty popular. We implemented, I think, 4 years ago because unfortunately we had, I believe, a string of 2 recordable incidents in a matter of like a month. You know, they can cash in their points for gift cards, for TVs. A popular one, believe it or not, is a Traeger. I think a lot of our employees like to cook, I guess. So, but they've really bought into that, and they've bought into the culture. Like, you know, I mentioned with employees, it's so important. I mean, if you don't live and breathe that safety culture and a top-down approach, we're all in it together. It doesn't matter your title within a company. We have to make sure that every day we're focused on keeping people safe out there. And yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. There's a lot of hazards out there. One thing too, you know, that we really hit home with our employees is what I feel the most dangerous part of the job in the oil field is driving to and from work. You know, these guys work long hours, 12-hour shifts, but you know, they got to get to point A to point B, and it's very important to make sure we're doing proper journey management. And obviously in the winter, the conditions can be challenging, so it's just not at the workplace. I mean, things can happen, you know, getting to and from work as well. So.
That's one particular piece that I know the One Basin, One Way orientation safety program really focuses on. The unique conditions in North Dakota that someone coming from, you know, Texas or Louisiana, you know, we might not have hurricanes, but we sure have blizzards. Mm-hmm. And so making sure that they're aware of those unique hazards in North Dakota is a big priority, and I know you guys are really focused on that. So thank you for your efforts there. That kind of is a good segue for me in talking about the safety of our workforce and really what that means to the business community at large. North Dakota has really prided itself on being a good place to do business by and large. Many of the things we've talked about already today in terms of sustaining that good environment, things like workforce training, workforce placement, the safety elements, all of that is all tied together. Good examples of that business-friendly environment. There do remain some hurdles, as I think everyone in the audience can know, in properly balancing the regulations that are needed to maintain a safe and healthy state, balancing that with the flexibility of allowing members of the business community to be flexible in finding innovations to deal with the challenges that we all face. Josh, thinking about that balance and the need to really balance the Basin Balance book, as Preston put it earlier this morning, or excuse me, this afternoon, what are some of the burdens and challenges and hurdles that you as an operator have seen in the basin, and what are things that can be addressed to clear those hurdles?
You know, from my perspective, Brady, I think you nailed it in the fact that, you know, North Dakota is a friendly place to do business. In the counties and the cities where our operations are friendly places to do business. our bigger challenges come from Washington. And, you know, it's a matter of, you know, you see it in changes in administrations. They have regulations have a tendency to, policies and regulations have a tendency to not stay in the middle, but rather, you know, the pendulum swings pretty heavy on a regulated industry like ours is. And so it's staying on top of all of those things that becomes the struggle, but also keeping an eye on regulation coming from other states as well, in making sure that we can. I don't want to say keep bad laws and bad regulation from happening in North Dakota, but yeah, that's part of it. Staying on top of, good ideas, smart regulation. Should we be a regulated industry? Absolutely. I don't think there's anybody on this stage who would tell you otherwise. We absolutely should be regulated, but it's smart regulation that we're keeping an eye on, and working every day with my counterparts in Texas and New Mexico. We've got state government affairs offices in Austin, Texas, and Santa Fe, New Mexico, and often, laws and regulation, that are happening in New Mexico are a lot different than what we have here. But we have ways that we can work together on reaching good policy decisions in the states where we operate, and so
Would you say, Josh, that communication is top priorities in getting there?
Yeah, absolutely, and having people on the ground always is helpful, whether it's in our county seats, in our state capitals, or in the halls of Congress. We've got people there. I'm sure others do as well, but always being in touch with lawmakers and regulators and the such to reach consensus on smart regulation and policy.
And a lot of that, I know, means us finding answers to our own.
Oh, absolutely.
Our own issues.
Yeah.
That's really good insight, Danette. I'm going to move a little bit different direction. Looking forward to the state of the Williston Basin as a whole. We've seen good analysis from Preston this afternoon. Justin Kriegstead, he does a stellar job of putting together those awesome PowerPoints and crunching the numbers there. We've seen more on an industry-focused side of things, a number of mergers and acquisitions amongst our member companies, just within the Petroleum Council itself. This is what I would call relatively normal of any basin that is maturing and advancing. ONEOK is no real stranger to this phenomenon with its recent purchase of Magellan and its assets there. Using that as an example, Danette, what can you tell us about how M&A activity across the industry will affect development and operations as the basin continues to advance?
Well, Preston, I know you don't like mergers and acquisitions. We heard that. But for those of us who are doing them, it is actually very positive, I would say, for the long term. And I would say that ONEOK specifically closed on a purchase of Magellan, which is a refined fuels midstream company. Our assets overlay each other pretty fairly across the country. We maintain our operations in about 22 states at this point. But in addition to Magellan, we also have acquired EnLink and Medallion. We're in the process of those closing as well. Those assets are largely in the south, more in Texas and Louisiana. But all of that does come back to affect what's going on right here in North Dakota and in the Bakken. And I say that because while the Magellan acquisition doesn't necessarily change anything of what we're doing today. They're refined fuels, but we now own the fuels terminals that are in Grand Forks and Fargo. And that is meaningful because that is where a lot of the fuel that is distributed in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota is coming through. That's not our product, of course. We as a midstream company never really own the product, we move it. But it is impactful from that perspective. But the EnLink and the Medallion and then the Magellan assets that are further south really do have an effect on what's happening here in terms of the leverage that it gives for market opportunity. It's not necessarily about what's being produced here today, but it's about what's being produced here and where it's going. We don't have the capacity in this state to use all of the material that we produce every day. It has to go somewhere. It has to hit a market, and being able to hit the market more effectively, more efficiently, and to provide more benefit to the producer, which ultimately returns to the mineral or the mineral holders, all of those interested stakeholders, that really does have an effect on the long term. So mergers may be painful in some ways for some folks, but at the end of the day, these are strategic in terms of the long-term look, the long-term goals of these companies, and what that means for ultimately the production that's happening right here and how it gets to market and where it goes once it gets to market, not just domestically, but globally as well, because we all know as we look around the world, what we're doing here today is really important to our allies all across the world. So it's meaningful, and I know you'd like to see lots of activity. And you know, I was thinking about this, Preston, after you said that. You don't have to look very far west into Montana to look at, or even right here in North Dakota for that matter, to look at that, the risk-taking group that really developed the opportunity here, right? And then you get the big guys that come in and they buy all the stuff and they operate it and really do a great job with it. And then ultimately as it all declines, and I'm thinking about that Highline area of Montana, you get these very marginal wells, right? And who comes in and operates those but the risk takers again? You kind of run that cycle through the process. And so while we're going through mergers and acquisitions right now, you know, in the long term, there's opportunity for a lot more risk to be taken in this area.
Danette, I really like how you refer to that as part of the life cycle. And that's really what we're looking at. Justin's last slide that he introduced really showcased how many innings we have left, and I share that opinion. There's a lot of future left, fortunately, so we have a lot of opportunity there. Kent, from a service sector perspective, what do mergers and acquisitions in the upstream and midstream mean to businesses like yours?
Yeah, Brady. As a service company, there's two stories to tell there. We could be, you know, NewKota could be currently working with Operator. You know, everything's going really well. We have a good program with them. You know, we have a good look ahead. They could potentially be bought out by someone else and, you know, get merged with another company that has a prior relationship with one of our competitors, and that's just the way it works. We've been on both sides of that with, you know, the M&A activity that's happened in the last couple of years. I think it's just a part of M&A activity. It's going to happen, right? So it's challenging for sure as a service company, but I think you just got to navigate through it. You want to make sure that you're on the right side more than you're not, I guess I should say. 2 weeks ago, I was just looking at the rig report, and I was just kind of thinking, what does life look like if all these mergers and acquisitions would be closed, would be done? I think there was 36 rigs operating at that time, or drilling, I should say. I think one of them was drilling disposal well, so say 35 drilling for oil and gas. And out of the 35, there was 4 companies that made up 54% of those rigs. So over half those rigs being Cord, Conoco, Continental, and Chevron. So I mean, I think as a service company, you want to make sure that you're aligned with those companies as well as, you know, working for the others. But it's smart business to make sure that you're ears to the ground, know what's going on, and try to make sure, like I said, you're on the right side of it. So.
Yeah, right side of it, would you say that there's an opportunity, I think, for the good actors, the folks that are doing good, solid business and working to maintain that kind of integrity within their organization? Those would be essentially all the bad apples and chaff would be weeded out.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, Brady. That's one definitely positive from these mergers and acquisitions is I think the Bakken is becoming a safer Bakken. You know, years ago I started in the Bakken in 2008. Everyone's running around trying to secure your acreage, drilling wells like crazy. The safety standard wasn't there. And generally these bigger companies that come in do have a great safety culture, right? So it's as a service company that believes in that, you're aligned with these bigger companies and trying to make sure people do come home safe every day. And yeah, I think it creates a safer Bakken. It's a more of a mature play right now. It gives service companies a bit more of a roadmap. You generally know their yearly plan, more and less, of how many wells they're going to drill, how many wells they're going to complete. It's an easier way to do business compared to the early years when they're like, can you get out here and how soon can you get here? So
a little less cowboy and a little bit more.
Cowboys aren't bad.
No. Another symptom of a really healthy oil field, in my humble opinion, sorry, Preston, is the advancement in technologies and innovations that really drive the industry as a whole forward. As operators attempt to get more and more of that resource out of the ground. One of the most anticipated technological improvements or advancements that we're hearing about in North Dakota is enhanced oil recovery. Now, Josh, I know you're very familiar with the work being done at the ERC, and I know that John here is going to regale us with everything going on in the ERC in the future, but within individual companies, to find the key to unlocking a new level of production in the state. So, Josh, can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing on the ground and the importance of continued investments in things like enhanced oil recovery research and getting EOR operations to a point where they're economically viable?
If everybody in this room hasn't had an opportunity to go to the ERC in Grand Forks and take part in they do an almost like speed dating, where they'll do a series of presentations no longer than how long, Darren?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? You get 5 minutes, and they're clocking these folks. You better stick to your 5 because then Charlie's going to come on stage with a hook and pull you right off stage. The amount of research being done at that facility is mind-blowing. And the cool thing about it is it's not just academic research for the sake of academic research, to fulfill a federal grant of some sorts. If we have an issue, we generally look around at each other and we'll say, okay, now let's call John Harju. Maybe ERC is going to be able to help us with something like this. So there are real projects being done on the ground right now for enhanced oil recovery, whether it's, something that Cord's working on or something that Liberty's been working on, but those projects are happening and everybody else in the industry is kind of waiting with bated breath to see how these things turn out because, those can be absolute game changers for an industry like this in Western North Dakota. With EOR, the sky is the limit, whether it's carbon or any other form of enhanced oil recovery. I worked in a field that was water flooded. Probably not a conducive way of capturing more oil from the shale in North Dakota, but it certainly worked, or in the Bakken and Three Forks. It certainly worked in Cedar Hills in Bowman County, and it made that field successful. But they're transitioning there to a CO2 recovery in certain parts of that field, and hopefully going to be seeing some success from that. So I know that John and Darren are speaking later this afternoon. I hope they get more than 5 minutes apiece, because the stuff that's going on at that research institution is truly amazing.
Thanks, Josh. Industry development, like what we've seen in western North Dakota since the boom days, doesn't just happen overnight. These things take a lot of time and collaboration and relationship building and resource dedication and prioritization, and the list goes on and on. Danette, can you please talk to us about the key ingredients that you've seen from your perspective as a representative of the midstream sector, and what it takes to successfully get to where we are today, and what key ingredients are going to be necessary into the future?
Well, Brady, I think you actually hit the key ingredients right there in your intro. That landowner coordination, the local government coordination, having those relationships with those very key stakeholders is literally the underlying factor of everything that we're doing. We could not do what we do without successful relationships with those particular stakeholders. When I think about the go forward, there's so much talk about the need for CO2, for EOR, those kinds of things. And, I grew up in central North Dakota, and we had we still have a high-pressure natural gas line that runs through our farm. It takes me less than 5 minutes to walk from the house to be on top of that particular pipe. Nothing like learning how to run a digger over the top of a big natural gas pipeline. But what I think about when I think about folks everywhere pretty much east of 83, they only have experience with pipelines that bring them something that is beneficial to them. So natural gas, obviously, my grandpa was very keen when he signed the agreement with WBI, well at that time MDU, and we have a farm tap, so we have natural gas. We're maybe one of the only farms out in that whole area that has natural gas service, but we have it. But the other kinds of pipelines that we have out there are water, fresh water, so rural water. So everybody's experience with pipelines out there is something that brings them something that they're getting a benefit out of. And I keep thinking about the CO2 conundrum of folks who are afraid of and not willing to have CO2 pipelines run through their area because they don't understand them. And there's not something that's beneficial to them personally from that because they don't understand the long-term goal of the use of CO2. And so I think we have a great opportunity ahead of us. We can call it a challenge, but it's an opportunity for education and building a shift in the mindset of what is the benefit of this in the long run. It's not necessarily about me being able to tap into CO2 pipeline and carbonate my beverages, but it is really about what comes from enhanced oil recovery and what that means to the state as a whole when you think about all of the tax revenue streams that come off of those kinds of production and benefit every corner of this state. Maybe that helps to shift that mindset just a little bit. The other thing I think that we need to work on a little bit more is the understanding of regulation. Where does federal regulation play? Where does state regulation play? And where does local regulation play? Where do those things intersect? And where do they divide? And so those are some of the other opportunities I think that we have when we look about the long term of development and continuation of everything that's going on. I want to say thank you from the very bottom of my heart. As a pipeline operator, thank you for being willing to have our pipelines.
Thanks to that. So we're talking a little bit of infrastructure, and I'd be remiss if I didn't focus a little bit on the roads and bridges issues. I'm sure that roads, bridges, and other pieces of infrastructure like that are no less important in areas that your crews operate than they are anywhere else in the state, and especially in the Williston Basin. Can you tell us just how important they are to you in getting your equipment and personnel out to the field, and the importance of continued investment in those bare bones infrastructure pieces?
Yeah, no, for sure. They're super important. I mean, we're not getting our equipment to location if not, right? So we, rely on them. But also with that being said, we're not the only ones that use them either, right? So, we have to be a partner. We have to be a good neighbor. We're all in this together. We all live in North Dakota, and we all enjoy the great roads that we have here. We also have weather changes, you know what I mean? We have a freeze and a thaw, and we have rain and everything like that. So we have to make sure that that's being respected. We're going to make sure we take care of our roads. Like I said, be good neighbors. We might only go on that road for a 2-week, month period, but there's someone that lives there forever, right? Their farm relies to get to their farm on there. So I think it's just, common sense. I got to, the WDEA, Jeff, you guys do a great job with the roads. I mean, you spoke at our Minot Chamber Energy Committee a couple weeks ago, and I didn't realize the infrastructure that you guys have out there with all the, the cameras and weather monitoring systems. I think that's important too. I think that's a good example of, industry working together with regulations. And just because it rains in a certain county, I mean, Mackenzie, Williams, Montreal, they're big counties. I mean, you might get a rain on the north side of that. The south side might be completely dry, and that's what Jeff and your group's doing. I believe you said you were able to watch the northern lights. The cameras are so good now, and maybe a bird hatch was it too, you were telling us, I think so. But no, technology has to play a piece to, getting things done and making sure that we move forward. I mean, there's 365 days in a year. If we lose a day to get our equipment mobilized, it's just one less day of production, one less day of taxes, one less day, right? So.
And that one less day affects everyone.
Yeah.
From the companies that are working on the service side, to the operators, to the mineral owners, to the local political subdivisions that get a share of that tax credit, tax revenue. So really glad you brought that up. I know we're running a little short on time. We've got about 4 minutes left. But there's one thing that is on, I think, a lot of people's minds. Coming up in January, we have a legislative session that's going to gavel in. Josh, Danette, you two are chair and vice chair of the NDPC's legislative committee. What do you see as the top issues that will rise to the top as priorities this next session on a statewide level? And I have in my notes, I need to ask you what you're seeing already in terms of the effects of term limits on our legislative body, not just in the coming session, but even the last session, we're already seeing the effects. So I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of lead us into that discussion.
So we could probably just say this in unison, but
1, 2, 3.
property tax. Property tax and pipelines, whether that's eminent domain or other restrictions on pipeline development, those are probably the two key things that I see coming. Interestingly, I have heard that of the bills that are being circulated through Legislative Council at this point, there's already over 40 property tax related bill drafts under development. I have no idea what they say. I'd love to know what they say. Being the largest property taxpayer in the state, I'd really love to see what they say. But there's going to be significant attention. Whether Measure 4 passes or not, there's going to be significant attention to taxes. In terms of legislative recruitment, and then I'll be quiet, I just want everybody to know that there's a conscription process now with term limits. We all have to take our turn, so you just figure out when it's going to be your time.
When you sign up for the draft?
Yes.
When you turn 18, that's when, that's when you become a legislator at some point in your life. I think we have great legislators in North Dakota.
Me too.
The problem is that they are term limited now. And, there are good people out there who could serve in the legislature tomorrow if their family life allowed it, or if where they're at in their profession allowed it. I think, hopefully, the rest of the state sees that, and we can be a bit more open about allowing our family members and our employees to spend, the 80 days in Bismarck. Trust me, these sessions are not going to end after 60. You're done seeing a 65-day legislative session. Not happening. You're done seeing a 75-day legislative session. I don't see that happening either. 80 days, you know, looking back in the back of the room,
Creative
and I'm just,
calendar.
you know, there's the people who come to Bismarck on a regular basis just plan on staying for 80 days because, especially if there's over 900 bills in the hopper right now at Legislative Council, and that's going to take time. And so yeah, it's going to be an entertaining legislative session, I think.
That is an interesting choice of words right there.
So it's here before we know it. You know, the election's less than 30 days away. Early voting's happening now. I think the one thing that I'll tell everybody that I tell our employees, and we tell employees throughout the company is, go vote. You know, that's plain and simple. Do your research on the candidates. Do your research on your measures, and then take the time to go to the ballot box and vote, or vote by mail, or vote absentee, or however you do it. Just go vote.
We appreciate that. I know we're getting to 3 o'clock and Jeff is giving me hands here, but just to follow up on a couple of the points made, we are going to certainly see a taxing of the brain trust of legislative leadership. Let's see, I see 2 in the room right now. It's up to everyone in the audience as local community leaders, I think, to help educate them on the priorities you all are seeing out in your respective communities. We're trying our best to do our part. We weren't able to get legislators or candidates out into the oil patch this year. We're going to work on that. But I think it's up to each and every one of us to take the time. And Ken, I mean, you have 3 new candidates that are expected to be elected to the 3 districts surrounding Minot here in the next election. And I mean, that's a big deal. I've had the good fortune to meet them. But bottom line is that they're very unfamiliar with what our operations are, what they mean to the communities in western North Dakota, to the community of Minot. So it's up to our industry and our partners on the local level to help educate everyone and be educated ourselves on the importance of working together and collaborating to tackle issues that affect us all. So, with that, I want to thank my panelists today. They've been extremely helpful in helping answer questions. Really appreciate their time. I think they're going to be around for the duration of the afternoon, or at least part of it. So if you have a chance to grab them and have questions for them, we can corner them up. Appreciate them being here, and thank you all for having us.